Tonight, the nation's top docs testify on Capitol Hill.
There is a real risk that you will trigger an outbreak that you may not be able to control.
With a warning about reopening too soon. And
if the video wasn't there, I don't think there would be an outcome that anybody would be satisfied with.
As the man who captured the video of the killing of Ahmaud Arbery breaks his silence, the Justice Department weighs federal hate crime charges against the father and son behind the shooting. Plus, as Americans navigate a new normal amid easing restrictions, sports leagues consider when to get back to their game. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. An unprecedented hybrid hearing in the nation's capital. Welcome to Faith Nation, and thanks for joining us. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. It was unlike anything we have seen before. A hearing on Capitol Hill that was part virtual, part in person. The nation's top health experts addressed the overall coronavirus response and the strategy for reopening. For more now, here's CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson. Abigail, what we were watching was history in the making today.
That's right, John. It was a unique day indeed, as Dr. Anthony Fauci and other health experts testified in the Senate via video conference, and they warned against the consequences if cities and states reopen before meeting the criteria to go into that phase 1 of reopening.
My concern is that we will start to see little spikes that might turn into outbreaks.
Fauci warned without sufficient control, cities and states could be set back economically and socially.
There is no doubt, even under the best of circumstances, when you pull back on mitigation, you will see some cases appear. It's the ability and the capability of responding to those cases with good identification, isolation, and contact tracing will determine whether you can continue to go forward as you try to reopen America.
Top of mind for many senators, the reopening of the nation's schools.
Even at the top speed we're going, we don't see a vaccine playing in the ability of individuals to get back to school this term.
Republican Senator Rand Paul, who is also a doctor, believes it's a huge mistake if schools don't open this fall.
I think the one-size-fits-all that we're going to have a national strategy and nobody's going to go to school is kind of ridiculous.
He suggests the decision to reopen should lie with local school districts.
Much as I respect you, Dr. Fauci, I don't think you're the end all. I don't think you're the one person that gets to make a decision. We can listen to your advice, but there are people on the other side saying there's not going to be a surge and that we can safely open the economy, and the facts will bear this out. But if we keep kids out of school for another year, what's going to happen is the poor and underprivileged kids who don't have a parent that's able to teach them at home are not going to learn for a full year.
Fauci responded by saying his job is to advise according to scientific evidence, not economic or social impact. He also warned there's still a lot of unknown about the virus, particularly when it comes to its effects on children.
For example, right now, children presenting with COVID-19 who actually have a very strange inflammatory syndrome, very similar to Kawasaki's syndrome. I think we better be careful if we are not cavalier in thinking that children are completely immune to the deleterious effects.
Fauci testified that he does not think the U.S. has the virus under control yet, and that he also thinks the death count is likely higher than what we've recorded thus far. Back to you, John and Jenna.
All right, thank you, Abigail. Well, today, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi unveiled the latest coronavirus relief package. The HEROES Act includes $3 trillion to help the economy hit by the lockdowns. A high cost, but Pelosi says not acting will be more expensive. The plan includes $1 trillion in aid for state and local governments, assistance for mortgages and rent, more cash to payments to Americans, help for the post office, and more. The cost is expected to run into the trillions again. Some Republicans say the plan just amounts to a wish list for Democrats. But Democratic leaders say failure to act will hurt struggling Americans.
Our country is still hurting. Our people are still suffering. And Senate Republicans are blocking action on critical coronavirus legislation. Each day they refuse to act sets us further behind.
And the House will vote on advancing the latest measure to the Senate come Friday. The Senate is not expected to take it up until after Memorial Day recess.
White House officials are discussing what they would like to see in the next relief package. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us now. Ben, how exactly does the administration propose to get more aid into the hands of those hurting due to the shutdowns?
Well, John, for one, the White House wants to see the payroll tax in the next stimulus bill. President Trump has called it smart policy. And today, his White House press secretary says, look, it is designed to help low-income Americans hit by the pandemic.
Said many times that the U.S. is doing far better than any other country when it comes to testing.
Yes.
Why does that matter? Why is this a global competition to you if everyday Americans are still losing?
Now, that was President Trump in the Rose Garden talking about testing. Yesterday, he said that we have prevailed when it comes to testing. But as you heard there with that reporter, they got in a bit of a back and forth. But back to the payroll tax mechanism, he said the payroll tax cut is not a deal breaker, but it is something they do want on the table when discussing this with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other lawmakers. And let's break down the numbers on the testing. Each and every week, 350,000 people are tested. McEnany said by the end of the week, up to 10 million people in this country would have been tested for COVID-19. John?
All right, thank you, Ben. And to the Supreme Court, where justices are taking on a case over the president's financial records and tax returns. At issue is whether those records are subject to congressional subpoenas or a grand jury subpoena. The virtual hearing held over teleconference sets up a challenge to presidential immunity. The proceedings involve 3 separate but linked cases over whether the president's records are protected by Article 2 and the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution.
Not presidential finances. We're asking for his personal returns before he became president. Those are very different things. And they're not his papers in the sense of he's not in possession of them. These are subpoenas to private entities.
Whatever presumption this court has previously applied in cases that involve separation of powers, it should not put any finger on the scale for Congress's asserted legislative power in this case.
So why not just go back? Let the president say, I'll show you precisely how this is burdensome. I'm going to spend time, effort, working all these things out, figuring out what they mean, etc. And if he shows undue burden and lack of connection, he wins, and otherwise not. That's true of every person. That's Clinton v. Jones. Why not the same here?
That burden is being met just by us being here.
And a decision in the case is expected later this summer.
Well, joining us now is David Brody, CBN chief political analyst. David, as Jenna was just talking about, the Supreme Court is weighing whether the president can keep his tax records private. David, how likely is it that Americans are going to see Trump's financials in 2020, unlike we did in 2016?
Yeah, John, it's 50-50. And you know what? If they really want the answer to that, they should Google John Roberts' home phone number and ask him, because he's going to be the guy that's going to decide this 5-4 decision. I don't think there's any question about it. We just heard some of the oral arguments there. And John Roberts has, in essence, become the new swing vote on the Supreme Court. Now, the good news for the Trump campaign, or President Trump specifically, is that John Roberts typically has been pretty lax, if you will. In other words, more expansive presidential powers. And so that bodes well for the president. But once again, I think this is 5-4. And look, as to whether or not this is going to affect the election, I don't think so. I think this is all coronavirus or bust for the president.
Yeah. David, speaking of coronavirus, polling shows the majority of Americans do want to get back to normal, but at the same time, there's some fear about going to public places, that they would normally go to, hair salons, restaurants, that kind of thing. Dr. Fauci, he also warned that the consequences could be dire if the country opens up too soon. David, where do you see this going as more and more states begin to reopen?
Well, I think the facts are going to lead us to this eventual conclusion as to whether or not it was a good move for some of these states to reopen. And if the facts come back with not just more deaths and more cases, because I think we're all agreed that this is not over clearly and that there's going to be more cases and more deaths. But, what does that flattening of the curve look like? I think at that point, we'll find out whether or not this has considerable damage for the president. As for Anthony Fauci, look, if it were up to doctors and folks like Anthony Fauci, we'd all stay home for probably the next 2 years. So, I think you have to take a little bit of that with a grain of salt. And it kind of, when I was watching his testimony a little bit today, made me think about what is Trump thinking, sitting there in the Oval Office or wherever he's at in the residence, watching Fauci and going, yeah, not quite sure I really like that performance today.
David, speaking of Anthony Fauci, today Senator Rand Paul had some sharp words for Dr. Fauci, arguing that he shouldn't be the end-all. Dr. Fauci, of course, resisted that characterization himself. David, was that just an aberration, or was today's hearing pretty much partisan?
No, I don't think it was partisan. I think Rand Paul, look, one thing about Rand Paul is he speaks from the heart, constitutional, conservative, libertarian, call him whatever you want. I mean, he's concerned about that. It's one thing for doctors and get the best medical advice to the president. It's another thing to basically make the symptom worse than the cause, which is what the president has been saying all along. But look, Anthony Fauci, I'm from New York. He's from Brooklyn. I get him. I'm jiving with him. He doesn't care. Look, he's almost 80 years old. He's from Brooklyn. He couldn't give a rip, if you know what I'm saying. And that's exactly what we got from him today.
Yeah, David, on Capitol Hill today, House Democrats, they unveiled a $3 trillion aid package. Your thoughts on that, and if it's dead on arrival?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's dead on arrival in the way Nancy Pelosi wants it. And here are two stumbling blocks. Number one, they want a boatload of money for states. I think you're going to probably see a middle ground figure. I don't think it's going to be as big as $3 trillion. I will say this, though. At some point, Republicans are very concerned. They want liability protections for hospitals and other employers who are going to get bombarded by lawsuits. So I think you're going to see liability play a role in this as we move forward. And once again, that package of money will shrink for the states. And I think that might be the middle ground.
Yeah. All right, David, Brody, we have to leave it there, but it's good to have you. Thank you for your analysis today.
Thanks, guys.
The shooting that stunned the nation. Coming up, the latest on the case against the two men charged with killing Ahmaud Arbery.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back. The Justice Department tonight is considering whether to add federal hate crime charges in the death of an unarmed black man in Georgia.
Video shows a father and son chasing down and shooting Ahmaud Arbery as he ran through their neighborhood. Both now facing charges of murder. CBN National Security Correspondent Eric Phillips joins us now. And Eric, today we learned more about the injuries Arbery sustained.
That's right, Jenna. Arbery's autopsy report indicates he was shot 3 times. 2 times in the chest, once in the wrist. Now, the report also reveals that he did not have any drugs or alcohol in his system at the time of the shooting. Georgia does not have a hate crime statute, but that does not mean this could not fall under federal guidelines. And the DOJ will also be looking at how local authorities handled this case from the beginning, mainly because it took until last week for there to be an arrest, even though this whole thing happened back in February. This video released to the public last Tuesday thrust the shooting death of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery into the national consciousness and jump-started the legal system to action. Within hours of the video's release, which was more than 2 months after the shooting, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations was put on the case. A day and a half later, investigators arrested 64-year-old Gregory McMichael and his 34-year-old son Travis, charging them with aggravated assault and murder.
I can tell you that if we didn't believe it, we wouldn't have arrested him. If we believe it, then we're going to put the bracelets on him, and that's exactly what we did.
Investigators say the father and son thought Arbery looked like a burglary suspect, recently seen on surveillance. This image shows Arbery looking at a home under construction in the neighborhood. Then there was a 911 call.
And you said someone's breaking into it right now?
No, it's all open. It's under construction. And he's running right now. There he goes right now.
Okay, what is he doing?
He's running down the street.
Arbery's mother says her son often jogged for exercise.
I'm very, very sorry for your loss. I don't know what else to say.
William Bryan shot the infamous cell phone video.
I am not feeling safe at all. I haven't felt safe in at least 3 to 5 days now.
Protests have erupted across the country calling for justice. Justin Giboney heads the AND campaign, a Christian organization that focuses on social justice.
That video has shaken the nation as it should have. And I truly believe that Christians should be on the front lines when it comes to making sure that justice is served. Because this is one instance, but this is kind of symptomatic of something bigger that's in our society.
Support for Arbery's family has come in many forms, including the hashtag #IRunWithMaud. Christian music artist Torrin Wells posted about the case on social media and says he was criticized and lost some followers because of it.
If that's the price I have to pay for speaking up for someone who died so that their family can receive some sense of justice, farewell. May the Lord bless you and keep you. I pray a number 6 blessing on your life.
Now, the elder McMichael was a former law enforcement officer who claimed this citizen's arrest of Ahmaud Arbery was attempted because of several recent break-ins in the neighborhood. However, local authorities report only investigating one such break-in involving an unlocked car, and that happened more than a month before this incident. Many continue to rally for justice for Ahmaud Arbery, some running 2.23 miles to reflect February 23rd, the day Ahmaud Arbery was killed. Jenna and John.
Tough story we will keep continuing to cover. Coming up, the future of sporting events in America when we come back.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy.
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope. all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
Welcome back. The city of Wuhan is making plans to test all 11 million residents for the coronavirus. The move comes as a new crop of cases has popped up in the Chinese city. After about a month without any confirmed cases, 6 people were diagnosed with the virus over the weekend. It comes just as normalcy was returning to the city where the outbreak began. On April 8th, Wuhan began reopening after 11 weeks of a strict lockdown. Now the city is weighing what steps need to be taken to avoid another wave of cases.
Well, here at home, as parts of America reopen, it begs the question, what does it mean for the summer sports season? Well, Major League Baseball is closing in on a deal to get players back on the field. Owners reportedly agreed to a plan to begin playing games again in early July. Now, fans wouldn't be allowed to attend those games at first. The season would also run for a total of 82 games, making it the shortest baseball season since the 1870s. The league is delivering the proposal to the Players Union today, and then it is expected to go into negotiations.
And joining us now is ESPN anchor and ABC News contributor Ryan Smith. Ryan, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Jenna, anytime.
Yeah, you know, fans, as you know, are just itching to get sports back.
Yeah, they really are. They want to do whatever they can to see the live games again. But the problem is there are so many things that have to happen before we see most major team sports come back. When you talk about individual sports, auto racing, golf, they're considering plans and implementing plans right now to come back in May and June. And the setup is a little bit different because just inherently there's a little more social distancing in individual sports. But when you talk about team sports, NBA, MLB, NFL, they're making plans to try to come back. But they've got a lot more work to do to try to figure out not only what health guidelines and government officials want them to do, also what's acceptable risk for players to come back, and how to structure an environment to make sure the disease doesn't spread among athletes playing these games.
Yeah, and for fans, what about the crowds? Do you think live sporting events will look entirely different from now on?
Oh, it's going to be totally different. I mean, you talk about what we've even seen with the Korean Baseball League. You've got teams playing and nobody's in the stands. In Taiwan, they have cardboard cutouts in the stands instead of fans. And it just doesn't seem like what we remember from live sports. But here's the thing. Until teams and organizations can figure out a way to make sure that fans are absolutely safe in that stadium, it's going to be hard to welcome things back. And that sets up a difficult scenario because we're 12 to 18 months away from a vaccine. How much longer would it take for everybody to be able to get access to that vaccine? And you have to ask yourself, if that's the case, then when will fans be able to crowd into these stadiums and root on their teams again? That remains to be seen. But I think you got a lot of fans out there who are saying, even if I can't go to the game, which makes me sad, at least I can turn on my TV and see my favorite team playing.
Right. And what about for these sports teams? What is the biggest challenge you think many of them face?
I think the biggest challenge is a consistent testing scheme where they can make sure that the players, that everybody who is going to be in the facility for whatever game is being played is reasonably safe with some sort of risk level established. Here's the thing. it's going to be difficult without a vaccine to guarantee everybody's safety. But I think all these parties are trying to figure out, hey, what would make us feel like we are as safe as possible in some reasonable level of risk? And so that consistent testing is going to be key. I think the other thing is making sure everything they do complies with federal and state guidelines, complies with health officials, because leagues like the NFL, MLB, the NBA, they're trying to make sure they don't do anything that runs afoul of state guidelines. Finally, I think it's going to be difficult to figure out how they actually play the games and where. Because if some states say, hey, we don't allow public gatherings, you might not be able to have a game there, but you still have to find a way to have teams play and make the competitive advantage fair. Those are things they have to figure out.
Yeah, we will see. All right, Ryan Smith with ESPN and ABC News, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Great interview, Jenna. Well, prayer and the White House. What Vice President Mike Pence says about the administration turning to God when Faith Nation returns.
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Finally tonight, in most workplaces, you're not likely to find people gathering to pray.
But in the latest edition of Axios on HBO, Vice President Mike Pence says that's exactly what happens during meetings in the Trump administration.
This is a president who welcomes prayer at meetings. And I must tell you, from the day the president tapped me to do this, we huddled quietly in my office, and before we got started with what was the beginnings of my efforts, I thought it was important to pray.
The vice president also says White House staff have felt the prayers of the American people as they managed the pandemic. Jenna, if there was ever a time to pray, it certainly is now.
Certainly now, and I think more offices, more people are probably praying more than they ever have before. I know here at CBN we are praying every day, so it's it's definitely a blessing.
Definitely a blessing and not a bad thing at all.
Well, that's going to do it for Faith Nation.
Hope to see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.